Thank you very much, Evelyn, and thank you very much to Working Group 3 of COREnet Co-Section. I am a very proud member of COREnet Co-Section. For about 3 years now, we've been collaborating with very important scholars around migration and religion throughout Europe, and I'm very proud that I am part of it. And really would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my projects and my understanding of how participatory and art-based approaches can contribute to our understanding of social cohesion in migration studies. I am a member of faculty at Istanbul Bilgi University, but also a member of Association for Migration Research. And for my art-based participatory projects in migration studies, I have been collaborating with my association, but also with my university. And I saw a couple of my students in the audience, and they are also very essential for this type of research. So I would like to also thank them. So I have a very limited time. Here's the outline of my presentation for today. I'm just going to briefly introduce how I think there's this very transformative power in artistic studies and how we should, as academics who are very far away from that field, should be really like at least trying to be part of it, to observe it, and to understand how we can actually, from a very multidisciplinary point of view, incorporate art into our studies. And then I will be talking about a couple of my projects. And finally, at the end of my presentation, I will just mention a couple of the lessons that I learned throughout this journey. I have to call this a journey because I'm a political scientist. And in my studies, I was never introduced to this type of ethnographic participatory art-based methods. But I still have the courage to apply these methods into my studies because uh, living in Turkey, studying migration, especially Syrian refugee question and all of their problems from a political scientific view, had brought me to this place where I was looking for different discourses to talk about refugees, to talk about living together, to talk about migration in a post-migrant society, which is Istanbul and Turkey. And from a very strict and rigid academic point of view, I found it is kind of nearly impossible to talk about all these issues of living together, social cohesion, in a conjuncture where very far right parties and populist parties are on the rise, and many host society members are shamelessly, like without any hesitation even, can actually spread racist discourse. And in our like mainstream media also, hate speech has become very, very dominant. So under these circumstances, I believe art gives us what they call a potential space, where actually academics can find instances of solidarity movements and instances of how collaboration between host society members and immigrants, where there is certain kind of interplay and negotiation of these like very dominant and negative discourses around migration and refugees. But also these types of potential spaces that we create through artistic projects can facilitate creative expression that we never think about before, especially within the academic circle. In the literature, sometimes they call this the artistic turn in migration studies. And I really wanted to part of it, like really experience how the power of art can create this potential space where we can discuss the things that we cannot discuss in the mainstream media, in academia, and in our political space. Another very powerful thing about art-based and participatory projects is challenging, of course, dominant narratives, but also recreating meaning and understanding. So this actually what attracted me to these types of projects, even though at least for my university, they do not have a lot of academic value still. But, this is a true passion from my perspective. And this true passion started with this huge project that we called The Other Stories. The Other Stories began as an exhibition. It took place just after COVID. Night is December 2021 to 7 February 2022. It was a very big exhibition that we compiled through a very small budget. We, through voluntary work of many, including artists, curators, volunteer students, etc., and in the leadership of Istanbul Bilgi University Center for Migration Research, we gathered the works of 50 artists from 12 countries. And these works were ranging from paintings, drawings, sculptures, photography to installation, video art, and performances. You can see, like on the slides, a painting by Işıl Gönen. And the exhibition took place in the Energy Museum of our campus, which is a very kind of like industrial atmosphere in and of itself. So this also, the space itself, made the exhibition very powerful. So these are some pictures from the exhibition. And after this exhibition, we invited 30 academics who study migration from different perspectives, from architecture department, from political science department, from the literature department, and communications department to visit the exhibition and then write their opinions about the pieces that they would choose. And finally, we accomplished to gather a book called The Other Stories. It's available both in English and Turkish. And we have the picture. It's a typical exhibition book, but it's not very typical because now, you can find very personal opinions and emotions of these academics who have to write about migration, about this whole Syrian refugee issue in a very academic way, finally introduce their opinions through artwork. So this is actually my first participatory art-based project. It's because I call this participatory because we invited these academics and we actually had a workshop before actually asking them to write pieces. They visited the museum, the exhibition. They had the tour with our curator, and then they got to meet the artist of the artworks of the exhibition. And after that, like after this process of creation, we actually came up with compiled this book, and it is available online. It's also available in hard copy, and I believe it's beautiful. This is from inside of the book, and I will put all the necessary links on the chat box. Together with the exhibition book, I also started this project, a podcast project called The Other Stories: Migration, Art, and Living Together. We celebrated the third year of this podcast series. We have 30 episodes. Some of them are in Turkish, some of them are in English. And of course, we don't have a very high audience number, but at the end of the day, I believe it is very important for us migration scholars to keep track of what is being done in the periphery, in the artistic scenes, to discuss the social cohesion issues, living together issues. And there are so many things are being done, but they are always in the periphery, not in the mainstream. So I see this podcast project as kind of an archival work where any interested scholar of migration can visit and learn about these projects, and also maybe like get in touch with these people who I talk to. Another thing is attached to the other stories project is the teaching modules that I prepared for my university students. So I really wanted the book to be read among university students because negative perceptions towards immigrants and refugees in Turkish universities are very high, unfortunately, even though they are highly educated young people, so they don't fit the profile, but they still have very negative perceptions towards refugees. And I believe like through the power of art and through the power of all these like opinion articles, students can realize how we can approach the whole living together, social cohesion and migration issues from a different perspective. So I seriously believe that art can actually change our perspective and really encourage us to also challenge our prejudices and stereotypes. So I ask my students to pick two art pieces and write and two essays from the book, and then prepare a social media campaign. And through these assignments, now the other stories have a social media page on Instagram. These are all student works. Also, the other stories have a YouTube page where the curator actually gives a tour of the exhibition. We have actually online exhibition page, and we also have some interviews with the artists, especially immigrant artists from the other stories exhibition. So the other stories was huge project. It has so many outputs, and I'm very proud of it. But it was my first project. I learned a lot, and of course, but the one thing that I learned was budgeting, and to increase the collaboration between artists, the curator, the academics, the project coordinators, etc. So after the other stories project, I was dreaming and envisioning a certain kind of a summer camp where we can actually like come together with artists, migrant artists, artists who do works on migration, migration academics, etc., and really like co-create and participate in the summer camp, and challenge all the narratives, etc. But then on February 6th, 2 years ago, a horrible earthquake happened, devastating earthquake happened in Turkey. And then I, of course, didn't want to do that project anymore. It kind of lost its meaning under those circumstances. But then, when we were actually trying to envision what we can do for people in the earthquake region, especially migrants, because they were also exposed to hate speech and all sorts of negative perceptions, even after earthquake, even though they experienced earthquake. I came up with this idea that why not turn the summer camp into a camp where we invite young people from the earthquake region, including Syrian refugees, but also Turkish citizens, and just create a space where they can process their trauma, express themselves through a variety of activities, including art therapy, painting, film, and textile workshops. We had this very small budget, again, through volunteer works of our art therapists, psychologists, painters, artists. We accomplished to put together a living together camp last year, and we spent 6 days in Boulder, which is a very nice actual holiday type of resort place in Turkey, because we wanted those young people who recently experienced earthquake to actually also have a nice and also a space where they can actually spend the night, not in the tents but in a decent place, but also like enjoy the summer. And we not many people know about this, but Samanda was hit by the earthquake tremendously. And in Samanda, there's a large population of Arab Alawite population. They're all Turkish nationals. And most of them, they don't have any communication with recent Syrian refugees because of religious reasons and other things. So many young people from Samanda, Turkish Arabic young people from Samanda, they had the chance to actually meet their Syrian refugee youth for the first time in their life. And this whole program actually showed us how solidarity can be constructed not by talking, not through verbal communication, but through art. So they made films together, they painted together, and eventually, we witnessed how actually they realized it that they are sharing the very same problems, and they were like, it was just amazing to witness that kind of communication and recognition. And this also made me believe in art. These are a couple of pictures from the exhibition and from the space. The last project that I would like to mention is the Huban project. Huban project is a project by Vaha. Vaha is supported by Anatolian Culture Association in Turkey, but it's also a global project which aims to create artistic all types of networks. And Huban is just one network which was created in Istanbul by Urban Coop. It's a whole another association. And when I actually was introduced to this project, I was like, okay, finally, now I have a chance to apply participatory methods. What I did was I actually got attached to this whole project, which was coordinated and written by this whole different people, not me, as academics. So like instead of being the coordinator, instead of like creating these projects, for the first time, I had a chance to participate in a project where they aimed to actually transform everyday public spaces in Istanbul into venues for cultural interaction. So Huban is a migrant artistic network, but they also last May had like 4 different events in different post-migrant neighborhoods in Istanbul. And my students and I actively participated in and studied those distinct events organized under this initiative. Our involvement aimed to document, analyze the artistic interactions occurring in post-migration urban settings and to evaluate the impact of these transcultural events on the logical migrant communities. So a couple of pictures. This is the Senegalese neighborhood in Aksaray. Huban, actually, this artistic network, the main objective of this project is to bring immigrant artists together so that they actually make their art, do their music. So they provide studio time, they provide all sorts of communications. And they also are doing these like side events where these this network comes together and plays street music in immigrant neighborhoods in Istanbul. And on the left, you can see like the artists playing music like on the street. And on the right, you see, also Senegalese neighbors who are like residents of this neighborhood also contributing to the music, and then this whole thing turns into a kind of a street music festival and dance festival. What we did is together with my students, we participated the event. We had these questions in mind. We talked to the participants. We experienced the event altogether without knowing the objectives or anything. And eventually, we used participatory research methods to collect data. And we employed a couple of approaches. So on-site observations. All of my students who participated this event actually came together, we did these meetings, and we explained our opinions, our observations, but they also kept journals and they sent me. They also talked to people, shopkeepers, etc., throughout the event. So they collected participant feedback, and they also focus on the significance of space and place in these interactions. In addition to that, then I went ahead and actually did in-depth interviews with artists and organizers. And together with my student, we went back to Sultanbeyli, a Syrian neighborhood, and we actually interviewed with shop owners after the event. And finally, we also interviewed with other important funders, donors for this event. So like progressively, we try to through participation, we try to make sense of this event. And these are the things that we used. Progressive participatory approach, diverse data collection. We also engage with artists, we dance, we really experienced everything. But also like we talked to the organizers like Mülteciler Der, Anadolu Kültür, Urban Cube. And we try to collaborate with all these artists, coordinators involved, but also with students to come up with more creative projects. This is also a picture from this event, which is very important because Huban is a collective of migrant artists. And there are like a lot of like different, both Oriental and Occidental, like Western type of um, instruments. And like the music they do, they actually sound like jam sessions. And when they play, it also sounds like jazz a little bit. And one of the Syrian participants actually showed his phone to me. It says Clash of Civilizations. So I don't know how to translate this in Arabic, but basically one of the participant observation about this music was described like that. So finally, right now, there's this another event coming up, and this event is called Rebloom, and we are collaborating with a Greek association from Athens called Inter Alia, together with my Association of Migration Research, but again with Huban and Urban Club. So from the participation, we became collaborators with this artistic network. And this exhibition will happen in Istanbul, in Taksim, like the heart of Istanbul, very soon, next week. And what we did here is we collected objects from immigrant artists and stories of these objects. And so there will be a kind of a festival. We will exhibit those objects, the stories, but also art pieces. There will be dance and music performances, but also there will be discussion circles about how immigrant artists are actually being challenged in living in Istanbul, etc. And yeah, so I'm very excited about this. This takes a lot of time right now, and I'm going to see how we are going to do in this festival as well. So I'm out of time, probably. I talk too much. I have a couple other projects here, but I'm not going to talk about these. Finally, the lessons learned about if you're an academic like me who's not very familiar with the artistic scene or this type of ethnographic art-based participatory studies, um, I think these are very important to mention. First of all, art, humor, drama, music are important, so we have to always if we are like kind of stuck, we cannot find ways to explain our findings to general public. These are the tools that we have to use. So we have to somehow familiarize with these tools, and and in order to familiarize with these tools, we have to give up our expertise and we have to start collaborating. And this collaboration, of course, is kind of challenging. So it always asks you to be mindful about potential for power imbalances. So I think in order to somehow solve these power imbalances through different actors from different sectors, you have to create a space where all participants feel valued and respected. So that's one thing that we have to be mindful of. We have to collaborate and we have to have to like, find a space where we can actually feel equal and respected. And in order also to do that, we have to have all the potential collaborators have to have understanding, a very clear understanding of the goals of the program, and to be flexible, because everything changes on the process. This is not like academic field research. This like participatory action research is, you necessitates you to be very flexible, and also like collaborate. Yet again, especially in the migration field, we actually deal with people with trauma. So we have to have also trained professionals like our therapist, psychologists on staff. Like we cannot just disregard that fact. And we always have to be very reflexive about our own biases and experiences throughout the process. So like, I'm being challenged every day while doing these projects. And of course, one of the most important thing to be really aware of is like how funding opportunities are so limited in this field, and how networking, but true solidarity, is essential. If anyone who would like to actually, coordinate or be part of these types of projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gülay, for your inspiring talk, and especially for giving also the last sharing the last slide about lessons learned. I think this is really,
I'm
really
still learning
helpful.
lessons, just so
Yeah,
far.
of course, but learned lessons so far, I think this is really insightful for us. For me, I can just talk. Of course, for me, I find it really insightful. So now we're going to have just a short discussion around Q&A. So again, for all of you, we have now 15 minutes time approximately. You can ask Gülay all your questions you have. She's here to answer them. And please keep in mind that by participating here in this webinar, you agreed to be recorded, and that you also give your informed consent about this, that we put the video later on the YouTube channel of COREnet. You can now raise your hands and or type your questions in the chat. I will read the questions from the chat, and I will just coordinate your questions a bit. So while the others are thinking, I may ask the first question. So since you're from International Relations Department, I wondered, and this is really a new approach, I wondered, what did your colleagues say about this approach? Is this still research, or is this just a hobby?
To be honest, I have to represent what I'm doing as like a hobby to my colleagues. Like I'm having hard time actually, and I share this view with ethnographers who are already doing this for years. Like I have to convince myself that this is also an academic work, because I have this formation of political science. So it is also kind of another inner challenge that I'm going through. But especially the other stories was very big, and the book that came out of it, like I also collaborated with my colleagues, so I invited them, and then many of them actually, they told me that, and that was my first time like ever write something on art, right? Because like we are not educated that way, and usually art professionals do that. And so like academia, even though when we talk like about migration studies, we call it multidisciplinary, I believe it's not that multidisciplinary. Everyone stays in their own zone, and when someone is doing something else, like a political scientist talking about an art piece and like making all these connections, then people might get upset, and we feel very vulnerable because we are not experts on this. But I think we also have to like cross these borders, like academic borders, because it's just like gives us a voice, and maybe especially in the Turkish university setting, these works are not counted as academic in my department. But so like it's a very like thin line, I guess, how to defend this work as an academic work, as real research in political science. I think it's possible in other humanity departments, but in political science, now people are obsessed with statistics, large and data, surveys, but we are missing a very important part of how to communicate very political issues like social cohesion and immigration.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. That's a bit what I expected.
Yeah, it's it's kind of a war going on
Okay.
inside.
So dramatic. Okay, that's not what I expected. Okay. Yeah, again, to our participants, you still have yeah, time. They yeah,
Sorry,
please.
Evelyn. I would like to ask something, but I didn't manage to find the raise hand button.
Okay. Okay, just for all of you, there is a small heart at the bottom of your screen, and yeah, it should be like
Yeah.
reactions, and there is the raise hand button.
Ah, okay,
Just
down below.
please go on and ask your
Okay,
question.
good. Now I have it. Good. Thank you. So first of all, thank you very, very much, Gülay, for this very interesting presentation that covered so many different issues and for all the work, which is kind of impressive. I mean, we did here in the Horizon 2020 project some art events. We managed to involve some migrants in doing some in participating in some art events, and it was extremely difficult. And now seeing how many different events you managed to conduct, this is quite impressive. So I would like to ask you, was it difficult to gather that many different people in one single place? That many different artists? Did you have some incentives for them? How did you manage to convince those individuals to participate in your projects? And on the other hand, I would like to raise an issue about your research being or having an academic perspective, because we managed to publish some paper out of the work we've done in a photo voice. And I definitely think that your outputs have a good potential for being published in academic journals if you could wrap up and if you could follow the proper red line in your research. I mean, if you could identify the novelty and if you could highlight this in a very comprehensive way. So I disagree a bit with the fact that this is more like a hobby. I definitely think that this has some research, some potential as a research output.
So I agree with you, Monica. It's just like it's publishable, and many migrant migration scholars also publish in variety of journals. I was just talking through the lens of political science discipline and departments. This is very unusual. Usually, these people are either from art departments or communication, or so like that's the reason why I like, of course it's academic. Like I seriously believe in the method. I learned so much. And and this is why, but at the same time it is very like, at least from where I come from, as formation, as a discipline, it is very unusual to do this type of things. And sometimes I find myself that I have to legitimize it, and then just calling a hobby also makes it easier for me, like to, like I answer why I keep doing this kind of stuff. How do I convince these people to collaborate? It's just like a constant, I don't know, Motivation, I guess. It's so hard. I think that's the biggest challenge. But what I learned is like if the cause is good, if you have this like, and then you'll find very similar people, and all of a sudden you have a community of people who are also willing to do, say, like, give their time and volunteer and even sacrifice a little bit. So actually, yes, like Horizon projects have certain kind of funding, so you do it. But all these projects that I mentioned, these do not have any funding. So I really wish that I can compensate the artists for the Rebloom. I actually, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do that, I have to have some funding for the artists, right? So because I learned about this, like you cannot just ask volunteer work all the time. But usually, we didn't have any incentives. It was just like through network and through by having a really well set out objectives of the project. So I have a very clear understanding of what's going to happen, and I communicated this like, so you start very early on, of course, especially for the summer camp. It was like earthquake victim youth, right? So like everyone had that like open hearts. So many times you just like you need to find the people who's thinking like you, and then like also magic happens. Like I never seen anything like that happening in academia. But if you have a good cause and if you just like use art to say something different, all of a sudden like you can find people. That's my experience for a very long time. It's not very easy, to be honest. Like, I talk 100 people and then I end up with 5 of them, right? So it's very like very, time. It's like, you have to have time to do this and also motivation to connect with people and to see whether they share your vision or whether they are willing to contribute to the vision and change it and like make it more beautiful. This is my experience because I didn't have funding. This is
Even
how
with funding, it's
volunteer
very
was
difficult to get
stated.
people engaged. Thank
Yes.
you very much. Thank
Yeah.
you. Evelyn, you're muted.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can't hear.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say, I think we have time for a very short last question or comment. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to say something? Okay, if not, then I just want to ask you, because is it this participatory approach, art-based approach? And you said you created kind of a healing space. So is there something that you would recommend to refugee centers that they should give obligatory art courses to the refugees to just deal with their traumatic, experiences?
To be honest, like when we look at social cohesion programs in Turkey, every program has an art class, and children paint pictures, and then they have the exhibition, and they call it social cohesion art exhibition, something like that. And then, but here, like my observation is, rather than having the art classes, we need to have some type of art therapy, which is way different. It is like it necessitates like this performance and this like sometimes even forced connection, but it's very physical. So that's the reason why space is very important. You cannot just like put people in a white room and to be creative. And that was the reason why we had this summer camp in a very like natural setting, for example. So like one core like imagining these types of projects, and if we really want to see how art can transform narratives, etc., we really like be mindful about the space that we are going to put people in my opinion. So art classes, yes, like they work, but if we want them to work in a manner that can change something, then we should be mindful about the space. So that's the reason why I talked about potential space. So current political landscape doesn't give us that space. Media, it doesn't. So, and how do you create that space? The answer is through art, but also the atmosphere and like the way you come together should be arranged in such a way that there won't be any hierarchy and your traumas will be respected, etc. And so like simple art class, it will work, of course, but really taught well type of art therapy session through a summer camp, like a different kind of landscape will definitely work better.
Okay, thank you, Gülay, for your presentation again.
Thank you.